Good morning, everyone. It's Pastor Jonathan. I hope this message finds you well. Today, I want to visit Exodus chapter 3, the story of Moses and the burning bush. And before I read just a little snippet from that story, I want to give you a reminder of the context that it happens in. So the Israelite people are slaves in Egypt under the oppressive hand of Pharaoh. And they're crying out to God continually, day in and day out, to be rescued from their circumstance, their situation that they're in. And so the story begins to unfold, and Moses is put in a basket and rescued from Pharaoh's hand as countless Hebrew babies are being killed. And the Nile carries him safely into the arms of Pharaoh's daughter, and he's raised up in Pharaoh's household as one of his own. And then the day comes when he's older and he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and he rises up against the Egyptian and kills him. And he flees because he's terrified. And so he flees into the wilderness, and he winds up in the company of the Midianites, and he ends up marrying a Midianite and becomes a shepherd to the flock of his father-in-law Jethro. And it's in this situation, Moses being a shepherd, that he encounters God in the form of a burning bush. And so I want to read to you just a little bit out of Exodus chapter 3. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. And when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. He said, Don't come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. And then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this Moses hid his face, because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. What I love about this passage is how clearly we get a glimpse of the character and nature of God, especially in our own circumstances nowadays, where what we once knew as normal has been taken away from us, and we're entering and living into a time where everything seems so foreign. Often our prayers to God that things would go back to normal, or our prayers to God that we would just make it through another day, or our prayers to God that we would be strengthened in everything that we do, feel like they're going unanswered. And I imagine that was the same for the Israelites during their time of slavery. Years of praying every single day. And it felt like no one was listening. But here we see a different God. We see the confession of God that he has seen, God has heard, and God has come down to do something about it. And I love that. I love that. Not to say that God wasn't present with the Israelites in Egypt to begin with. Not to say that God didn't care all the years that they were suffering. God was with them. God was in their brother and sister serving alongside of them. God was sweating with them. God was hurting with them. But in chapter 3, we get a clear glimpse that God has seen, God has heard, and God has come down to do something about it. Do you believe that in your own life? That you serve a God who sees you, that God that hears you, and the God that laid the foundations of the earth, the God that raised Jesus from the dead, actually cares about your well-being? That's my challenge for you today, is 1, believe that. Pray about that. Think on those things all day long. My second challenge to you is do one thing for someone else, where at the end of their day, when they're looking back on their own day, they can look at that thing and pinpoint it and say, God saw me today, God heard me today, and God came down to do something about it because of you. Saint Teresa, or Mother Teresa, says, Christ has no hands but yours. So let's go and be the hands and feet of God today. You are loved, brothers and sisters, and you are missed, and I cannot wait to be with you again. Peace be with you.